And welcome to the first Winter Garden Forum with Project Green. Thank you for coming today. It looks like we've got a really good crowd and a lot of happy gardeners looking forward to the next few months. Thanks to Beth Fisher and the Iowa City Public Library staff for their support in this joint venture with Project Green. Our garden forums would not be possible without their help. I'm Diane Allen. I'm co-president of Project Green, and I welcome you today. Thanks to all the volunteers who brought cookies for our intermission. So whoever you are, would you wave your hand a little bit? And who brought cookies? Oh, come on. All right. Okay. Today we have something new to offer, and that is gift certificates for the garden fair that we're going to have in May on May 8th. And they're $5 gift certificates, so if you have someone in mind for a special Valentine gift, this would certainly be a nice way to tell them that you care about them. And also, many of us are to the point, our gardens are pretty full. Perhaps you'd like to give one to a neighbor or to a friend. So think about that. We'll have them for sale at intermission. Also, at intermission, if you haven't done this, sign up for the door prizes because we have quite a few that Project Green planned, and it looks like our speaker brought some as well. Our annual plant sale will be on May 8th. That is a Saturday. It'll be from 9 to 11:30 at Carver Hawkeye Arena. It is a must for anyone who gardens, and please, like I said, start putting it on your calendar and telling your friends. Our garden tour this summer will be July 11th, and it'll be from 10 to 3, and if you want to know more about this, go to www.projectgreen.org. You have paper on your chairs and pencils as you came in, and that's for you to write questions for our guest speaker today. After intermission, we'll read the questions aloud so that our audience at home can hear this because this is being televised. And that way, our speaker will answer your questions for you. So for about an hour, we'll have a PowerPoint presentation, and then intermission, and then we'll have our question-answer period. Just want to remind you to turn off your phones if you haven't thought to do that before, so we can listen to all the phones being turned off, that wonderful melodies. We have a list of positions available with Project Green. Should you like to volunteer, we'd love to have some more volunteers. There's always fun things to do. Not all of them have to do with getting your hands dirty. So if you're not a gardener and you want to get involved in helping raise money for our community to beautify our community, certainly there's a place for you in our organization. There's a sheet back there for you to sign up. Also back there we'll have a list of plants, companion plants that we're looking for to sell at the garden fair. It's like this, and it'll be, if you have something to donate to our cause, we certainly would appreciate it. All right, so I'm going to let my co-president, Cindy Parsons, tell you about our guest speakers. So, Cindy.
Today we are delighted to have as our speaker Marcia Leeper. And Marcia comes to us from Des Moines, where she has worked for August Home Publishing and Garden Gate magazine for 14 years. She has designed and maintained their corporate and test gardens and has provided lots of photo opportunities for Garden Gate magazine. She has been recommended as an excellent and enthusiastic speaker, and we're delighted to have her. She will be gearing us up for the spring and gardening season, so please help me welcome Marcia Leeper. Thank you.
Thanks. I don't think this microphone's on. Is it? Okay, you can hear me just fine? Oh, I'm so glad. Everything since I got here has run very smoothly. I left this morning at about 11:15. And it was snowing and blowing, and I had to scoop my driveway, which Wow, is that unusual this year or not? So I had kind of a slow trip till about maybe 20 miles outside of Newton. And then everything was beautiful, and I got just about 10 miles from here, and the sun came out, and I had to find my sunglasses. So thank you. Today is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's to all of you. I think that in the information, you're supposed to learn about simplifying your garden, and I'll do that. But how about if we have something like for Valentine's Day called Why I Love to Garden? You interested? Sure. All right. I love to garden. When I was 3 years old, I have a photo with my cousin. We are all bundled up and kind of bent over the ground, and the caption on the back, which is in my grandmother's handwriting, says, "Marcia and Doug planting eggs to grow chickens." So at 3 years old, I had the idea that you could grow things. So from that point on, and growing up on a farm, I decided that that was one of the most beautiful things that a person could do, is to plant a seed, that beautiful little package of hope, and know that it's going to grow into something. So that led me into several different careers, and I won't bore you with all of that, but originally I was a nurse, and then I got a degree in art, and then several other things happened. I worked with disabled children for a number of years. And all the things that I did worked me up to, I hope, my last career of nurturing, caring for, taking care of sick plants, and creating designs and beauty for others. So as we go through this slideshow, what I'm going to do is just talk about the things here. And hopefully at the end, during the intermission, you'll ask me some questions about that. And then I will talk about the fact that some of us are getting older. I don't know about you, but I am. I will be 61 years old in a week, and I'm still digging. How about all of you? All right. Okay, I love gardening. From the time I get up in the morning, is that beautiful? I work for a gardening magazine by the name of Garden Gate. I work closely with the photographer. This garden is in Washington State. Because, you know, you can see how big everything is. But the beauty of this is just stunning. I love to garden. Behind every gate, there's something new to find. And in this case, look at this beautiful chartreuse gate. And behind that, if you look closely, there's a teapot back there. To everyone, the garden means a little bit something different, doesn't it? We all have different tastes. We may not all agree on a chartreuse gate, but we all love gardening. With the snow that we have had here in Iowa, doesn't this make us want to get out and garden? If we love gardening so much, and we have so much doggone snow, it must be frustrating for us gardeners to not be able to do that. I know it is for me. You know, in the beginning of the year, this is a concern, isn't it? What is happening underneath all that snow? Oh, I wish I had special glasses, you know, just the kind that could look through that snow and see what's going on. I am guessing, just guessing, there are some critters under there enjoying my handiwork. I love gardening because there are plants that take your breath away. These are lobelias. Lobelias, what are these? Thank you. It's been kind of a harrowing trip. Let me tell you, back up just a minute. The reason I stopped and called Becky, where's Becky? I gave her my keys to my car too, by the way. So I'm going to keep my eye on her. I called her and said, I'm not sure if I can make it because a truck had spun out in front of me and just missed the front of my car. So, I'm kind of frazzled a little, so forgive me if I don't remember all this. All right, these are lupin. The reason I put them in this show is I grew these from seed. Lupins are very great little perennials to grow from seed. If I were talking about reducing my workload in the garden, lupins may not be the one. Because doggone it, they're beautiful, they bloom. And next spring you go, where do they go? They tend to melt away, but I like them in any way because you can grow them from seed, and these are first-year plants grown from seed, started in January. I love lilies. I am taken away by this fragrance and the look and the differences between lilies. Now, this lily happens to be an Oran-pet. Are any of you familiar with that particular type of lily? The cross between a trumpet and an oriental. And that marriage is so stunning because it smells good, it is huge, and it stands up beautifully. There are some Oran-pets that, when they first came out, they did not have as much strength. Like Black Beauty was probably one of the very first ones, and you had to stake them up. But these days, you'll see Oran-pets that don't need staking, and in this case, I believe there were 9 blooms on one stem. Does anybody feel like summer now? Are you happier? One of the new things that's coming out, and I'm lucky enough in my job that I trial new plants. Many times I will get plants that, this year I had some for 2012. So I get to nurture those along and see how they really happen. I'm going to walk in front of the screen. I'm very sorry. I brought the newest issue of Garden Gate magazine, and these are the new plants. So if you have the desire to see it, then it is up here. And if any of you subscribe to Garden Gate, this will be in your mailbox here shortly if you haven't gotten it already. So as I look at new plants and get to trial them, I am so lucky. Here's what happens sometimes. Oh my gosh. I have a tree peony. Any of you have tree peonies? Okay. They are cheap, right? I got a 1 tree peony 2 years ago, introduced 2011. The price tag was $350. Now wait, I got 1 plant, and I have to make sure that that plant is going to be in great position to be photographed this year. Ooh, scary. So occasionally I just get 1 plant and have to really use my nursing skills to keep it good and healthy. But one of the new things that we're seeing is succulents. And lots of them, silver ones, curly ones, just all kinds of great succulents that can grow extremely well here in Iowa until you have to take them inside. Most of these are pretty tropical, but I have good luck bringing them in as house plants. I have a special technique to plant succulents in a mixed container. By planting them sideways in the container with a little stone under them, I like to use turkey grit because it's ground granite and has pieces to it so it doesn't sink back into the soil. So if I plant this sideways, and it can live with the culture of the rest of the plants because more often than not, they need more water. So if you lay it sideways, it gets good drainage, a little bit of drainage material underneath it. And I'm going to use my hands here. Can anybody see them? I started with a succulent like this. This particular one does get huge in nice climate. It ended up being 14 inches across and just setting in that container. Then I was able to pull it out, shallow roots, take it inside, and use it again next year. So you'll see lots of succulents out in the market, and hopefully you'll be able to find something as cool as this one. During this particular presentation, I won't name things, but if you have questions, this is about passion, not. Okay, yes.
What was that last succulent?
See, that's what you were going to ask me. No, I don't. I'll ask that question. All right, this is a container that I did a number of years ago, but I love gardening. Look at this. It has turned kind of a tan color and yet has color overlay. You put plants together and they will change. And in this case, we have coleus and caladium together. A beautiful combination, in my opinion. It's been in the magazine a couple of times. But I love the way it picks up the colors in the coleus in that caladium. And down below it, slender deutzia. Do any of you grow that? That is a shrub that belongs in a garden if you don't want to work very hard. It's called Nico. Nico slender deutzia. The little guy will bloom from early June, late May, clear into July. And this particular deutzia is miniature. It only gets about 14 to 18 inches tall. A nice little shrub. Comes back year after year. I have some that are a good 10, 14 years old. So slender deutzia, Nico, a great plant for low maintenance. That's this one. I'll point here. It's the bottom one here, not in bloom. But the foliage is still very nice. Don't you ever just, the lines in that coleus and the color and the caladium, they're just so delicious you could also eat them. This container is what I call my Cindy Lou Who. I have a wonderful friend who is also a professional gardener, and every year we exchange containers. She makes one for me, I make one for her. She found this container in a consignment shop, and it is actually a vase. And the way I got around that, and she got around that, is she put a lid that fit about 6 inches from the bottom, and then put soil in and poked holes in it. So when it drains, it's got plenty of room to have water in the bottom of it. And I've never really had problems with it. It's paint on the inside, and as a matter of fact, last year I made the polka dots yellow and black and put daffodils in it. So it's been a very versatile, fun one, but that's my Cindy Lou Who. Don't you love gardening? Because sometimes it doesn't have to look just like the magazines. They actually put it in the magazine. I couldn't believe it. It was wonderful. Here's that succulent I was telling you about. It is gorgeous, isn't it? But actually, would it get along with a dahlia normally? Probably not. But because it's got that rapid drainage, it grew beautifully. And a couple of the leaves broke. Well, I'm going to point again. This has probably got a pointer on it, but this one and that one, I put little pieces of bamboo underneath the foliage because it broke. It fell over and it cracked. So I just splinted it, and it repaired itself. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Those little succulents don't mind doing that at all. And if that doesn't make you think of summer and spring, I don't know what would. Light yellow is my favorite color, and I don't hesitate to use it in the garden. I have to use it sparingly because, it can be overpowering. But this particular petunia was new that year, and is called Baby Duck. So I had to put it in. And the petunias that are coming over the side here are pretty much, I thought that it was a marketing coup, because they sell these tidal waves in containers of 6, 3 different colors. So you are able to have this beautiful mixture in your garden. I love petunias. I work with some people that are petunia snobs. They say, petunias, ew. Well, they fill space, they create beauty, and they provide color. We don't want a whole yard full of petunias, but these petunias right here, if you want low maintenance, believe me, they will do that. I love gardening. I like to do tiny little containers that will draw people and slow them down and make them look. This container is about 4 inches across, about 8 inches the other direction, And that is bent grass from a golf course. And they just gave me a little chunk of it, and I trim it with scissors. Not a little lawnmower, as I'm sure you were thinking. So this is the kind of whimsical thing you can do in your garden, and particularly if you're having a party or there's children around, and it stops people and allows them to relax and to enjoy the garden. My friend David, who does the photography for Garden Gate, is a genius, and he knows I love this photo. It was not a photo that went into the magazine because there's too much space in it, but I just adore it. Okay, we'll have a moment of silence here. Now wait a minute. In my garden, I am lucky enough that I can go organic. There is now something in digital photography called Photoshop. So if I have something eat something, they fill in the holes. It didn't used to be that way. I would have to use chemicals, and it just broke my heart because there is a balance in our world. And y'all know this. I am kind of on the far side of the need to have it natural. But if we can find a balance somehow, everything connects with each other. And do any of you out there work outdoors all the time? Are you lucky enough to do that? That's when we see that. You know, we see how everything balances itself. This little grasshopper is on what do you think that plant is? If you know, I'm going to give you the newest edition of Container Gardens from Garden Gate. Nope, think again. Who said that? All right, are you interested in this? You should be. Containers Made Easy for you. I guess that's the last year's edition, but I have lots of I have a lot of containers in that particular one. Oh, I'm sorry. I shall repeat them. That is a lamb's ear. This small, tiny little grasshopper is on a lamb's ear leaf. And you can see the texture under there. Isn't that beautiful? The fact that David can see things through his lens and tell me what's there. One time, maybe I'll have something better here. Yes. Now, does anyone know what that is? Yes, what kind of an egg? An insect egg. How about thinking more beautiful? All right, who said insect egg? Okay. Would you mind giving that to her, please? Sorry to get you down. I'm not supposed to leave this area. Okay. This is a butterfly egg. And the fact that he captured this is stunning. It probably will never be published except for showing you guys. Now, when David and I were in the test garden, I have about 11 acres south of Des Moines that I trial plants in, and he finds this sort of thing for me. We were in that garden and we were looking at a rose we needed to photograph, and it's been long enough ago, I think it might have been a double knockout. Knockouts, do y'all use those? If you want to have low maintenance roses, knockouts are the deal. The double one hasn't been quite as successful for me, but I love, absolutely adore the new yellow one called Sunshine Yellow. It's an open flower, just like most of the knockouts are, but here's what it does. It smells like old, wonderful roses. Beautiful light yellow. I know not everyone's into that, but it is a very creamy light yellow. Nice open flower, very floriferous, lots and lots of blooms. Beautiful foliage, resistant just like the other knockouts. And you can walk past that 10, 20 feet away, and if it's a warm day, you can smell that beautiful rose fragrance. I even take petals and buds and put them in my pocket. I love gardening. And I'll bring them out, and they'll still smell like roses. Okay, so we were looking at a rose, and he saw through the lens a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. Now, is a rose a host plant for butterflies? It was a spice bush butterfly, and it emerged out, and he actually had found the chrysalis, the butterfly, and the leaf, that it was all happening around. So he was able to take a series of photographs just because we were there, just because we looked. We were able to find that. So this is a butterfly egg. Cool. Did you get your magazine? Yeah. She didn't keep it, did she? How many of you have seen praying mantis over the last 4 or 5 years, certainly? Big, big ones. Aren't they great? This gal is a war horse. This, you can see, it's probably October or November, and she's got one eye, and she's still there. About 5 years ago, I guess, and the reason we're having so many of these, in my estimation anyway, is that we brought a lot of this stuff in as an insect predator, and we're seeing more and more of them propagating because they like it. There are times that I'll have blooms of them in the small courtyard garden I have, these little tiny little guys hatching out. And I was talking about David, and he finds the sacs that those hatch out of. I have 2 of them. I should have brought in one. You could not rip it if you were the strong man of the world. You could not rip those things. They open up a little cap, somehow as if they had used a pair of scissors. It isn't just popped open. It is like one was in charge of cutting. And she or he did that, cut it perfectly, and they all emerged. And these little tiny, itsy-bitsy praying mantis would be all over the garden. I also had an experience about 5 years ago when I reached for, at the bank, you know how they have those cylinders that you put your money in? I just almost touched one. It's probably about 5 inches long. Ooh, creepy. And I'm glad I saw him, though, because I didn't want him to be sent through the space. A white crab spider on a white flower. Oh my gosh. And you'll find these in your garden everywhere. If you look, they tend to always be on the white foliage, white flowers, something white. But they're beautiful little spiders, and they do a wonderful job of taking care of little insects. And if I use chemicals in my garden, where would this spider be? I love gardening. I have a water garden, and it always reminds me. Are you guys okay if I'm just kind of chatting here? Yeah. Anybody that isn't, I guess, I don't know what to do for you. This frog reminds me, as I was a camp director and worked at camps for many years. In Girl Scout camp, you get a camp name. I'm not sure about the whole deal, but it's something about, don't call them Miss, that's too big deal. But anyway, you got this camp name. My last name is Leeper. So my camp name was Froggy. And then I directed camps both here and in different states and kept that name. And when I saw this, it reminded me, because I have collections of frogs because of the people that I've known. But let me tell you this story. About probably a year ago, I was in Target. And about 3 aisles away, probably, it was frog! Yelling. I'm going to be 61 years old, for crying out loud, guys. And it ended up being a young lady that was in camp in Ottumwa. I directed a camp down there. And we did a program, an orienteering kind of program and a building program for 12-year-olds. They actually felled trees, notched them, and made an Adirondack shelter, which is an open A-shaped kind of shelter like this. And they did it all on their own. And she came up to me. I had not seen her for years. And we had a conversation. Just to make it short, she said, "Guess what I do now?" And I said, I'm really not sure. And she said, "I'm an architect." I became an architect because of that camp session. Back then, it was just beginning to emerge, that girls could do all kinds of wonderful things. So I was delighted to know that I could not only grow gardens, but maybe grow children. This is a fern, lace leaf Japanese maple with a species tulip. If you've never grown species tulips and have an opportunity to, do it. They are long-lived, as opposed to many of the tulips that we have around these days. How many of you have good luck bringing your tulips back beautifully year after year after ever-loving year? Let me see your hands. Good. Not everyone can. Tulips, as much as we see them, and goodness knows I live near Pella, they grow them, but they dig them every year and put in new ones. Tulips are originally, and many of you probably know this, originally from Turkey. And there were great tulip wars, particularly in Amsterdam and the Netherlands and that area, because the more tulips and the more exciting ones you had, the richer you were, because they were extremely expensive. So you brought them in to show off. If you have a species tulip, you'll feel like those rich people that bought the tulips, because their stems are very loose and they look like geese kind of, and the top of the tulip is tight and overlapped. So find yourself some species tulips and enjoy them. This is nothing but phlox and a fiddle of a fern. How beautiful and how simple that is. And we will see that. Okay, everyone cross your fingers. We will see that, I hope, in April or May. When everybody asks me about gardening and say, well, when is it going to be spring? And I go, I don't know. In Des Moines, I have some 4 feet of snow over some of my gardens. So we'll see what happens. But if all goes well, and of course it will, because it always does. The reason you have to love gardening is because it always does. We cannot stop that fern from coming out of the ground. We cannot stop that phlox from growing. In gardening, there are so many unknowns, but isn't that the beauty of it? What is going to happen this year? Wow. These are in Washington State. Sorry. I do know a lady in Ames that has something that size. She has gotten them to that size, and she will never stop telling me about it. Okay. This is lamb's ear. It is big ears. Oh, this is a great one. This is an SIB. I want you to tell me a special interest book. We put them out probably every 3 months or so. What kind of a crocus is that, or is it a crocus at all? No, good idea. It's an autumn crocus, correct. There you go. It's an autumn crocus. Out of those lamb's ear comes in around October. We'll see those crocuses come through there. This lamb's ear is called big ears. A great, great lamb's ear for your garden because it does not bloom. Y'all know if your lamb's ears bloom, the foliage gets smaller and they are more challenging to take care of because they tend to get a bit more weedy looking. Big ears is a solution to that because they do not bloom. So I cut the blooms off of all of my lamb's ear, and that keeps it in better position, and the foliage is much nicer. So big ears, lamb's ear, a great kind of plant for low maintenance. Then, what a surprise, to plant a fall crocus in there and have literally hundreds of them blooming amongst that nice gray, soft, textural foliage. There's another fall type of bulb like that called colchicum. Colchicum. I work with somebody that calls them cold chickens. Colchicum is a fall crocus type bulb that many times you'll see them sitting on shelves or on desks. They will actually bloom from that bulb in the fall. You can plant them in the ground. They really do quite well. I have a colchicum called water lily. It is a triple white colchicum. Looks kind of like this, only on steroids, if you will. And they will multiply, bundle themselves up. I planted 3 of them, I think, about 8 years ago. And this, literally, it says probably 3 feet across, is that bundle of colchicums. So in the fall, look for those. Or you can see them in Brett and Becky's or any number of the bulb catalogs. So try your hand at some colchicums. They are not really cheap, but they do multiply. And they're what a wonderful thing in the fall garden to have these guys blooming. Ha! This is one of my favorites. My wife says I never listen, or at least I think that's what she said. Just kidding, guys. I thought it was cute. Ha! This is the late season garden that's changed considerably. This is a number of years ago. But it was a very, very dry season, difficult, so we had something called fish sticks. And all the employees at August Home Publishing actually made one of these, and they stretch all around in the garden. And it was kind of fun. I use some of these still today to swim through some of my grasses. You know, they just kind of peek through the grass. They're merely on dowels and painted. Some of them extraordinarily painted, but fish sticks in the garden. Okay, those look like impatiens, correct? What are the other flowers? Oh my gosh, wait. I heard a gentleman's voice very first. Okay. This particular toad, are you interested in one of these books? Sure. Okay. Well, wait, are you a woodworker? Okay. I have that too. Okay. I think you deserve, do you get Garden Gate magazine? Oh, wonderful. Oh, would you mind passing that back, please? Just hand over hand. That is a toad lily toadgen. Toadgen is probably the best, in my estimation, toad lily that you can grow in the area. Toadgen. And on a good year, when it has rained like last year, did it rain last year? Oh, shoot. Do you remember that? It rained and it got hot, and then it rained and got cold, and it was quite a challenging season, but I had some great flowers. This particular toad lily, toadgen, was 4 feet tall. Very vigorous, very exciting. Do you grow that one, sir? Toadgen? There are variegated leaf ones, various ones, but this toad lily will start blooming in the later part of the summer, and many times you'll see it still blooming in October. Do you have that same? Yeah, you know, you're one of the first groups that has known what toad lilies are, so many of you. So give yourselves a hand. Bravo. Because in the shade garden, there are more plants than hostas. Correct? There's so many tiarellas, all of the new things that are coming out, toad lilies and other plants. So grow some toad lilies, and they're low maintenance, easy to care for. Not everyone agrees that cats belong in the garden. My friend David is a cat lover. He lost his cat just about a year ago. It was 27 years old. I know. It's just almost as old as him. There's a bloom that you could lose yourself in. This is a double knockout rose. This very likely could be the rose we were photographing when we saw the butterfly. But when you see a rose from a distance, you say, wow, that's a beautiful rose. And when you see it close up and see the detail and the intricate parts of it, it's pretty exciting. Okay, here's another question. Are you okay with this? Yeah. The purple flower is a dianthus. What is the yellow? Nope. Yes. What kind? Who said that? All right. Wait, what kind is it? Do you see the foliage? That's the St. That's the St. John's wort foliage. Variegated. Variegated. Thank you. This variegated St. John's wort, and I just adore them. You can see that it's beginning to get some pink in it as well. They don't bloom much. They're mostly about foliage. But they will spread nicely on the ground, and they're more well-behaved than some of the other St. John's worts that you may know of. And it also lives a long time. I've had great luck with it on a south face because they like a little bit more warmth. They are a great little shrub, and mine is under about 5 feet of snow right now, so I'm sure, right, it's just fine. It'll come back for like the 5th year. So a variegated leaf St. John's wort with the dianthus, how gorgeous is that? This is a sedum, and can you find the interesting part? For Valentine's Day. The reason this is in there, when David goes to photograph, he went, I think this one is in Connecticut. This lady has a nephew who is blind, and she hides objects in the garden for him to find. And that was one of them. I thought that was sweet. So he could see the garden too. There are really no flowers in this photo, but I just love the texture and the movement and everything that's happening in here. This particular one, I believe, is in New York State, but it easily could happen here just as beautifully. But the nice texture and variegated foliage and little statuaries, it's really stunning. And I wish I was the gardener because I would have some job security there. This ivy is actually in the Midwest, and it's grown on a piece of wire, and I'd love to give it a try myself. That it's just a little armature that has been made with wire, and this variegated ivy is growing on it. It's beautiful. Okay, let's see if I can give away something else here. What have I got? Oh, any cooks here? No? Soups. Cuisine Magazine, another magazine that in the publishing company. I would like you to tell me what's underneath that petal. Close. Sorry. It is close. She's hot. We just saw one on a white flower. I'm going to give it to you because that was so cute. You know, you tried so hard. This is that, and she's a cook. You know, that's what I'm saying. Underneath here is one of those little white crab spiders, and I love that because it's almost like the flowers kissing, and you know, it's just so cute. But underneath there, the spider has pulled that up and made a little web just to hide itself. And we watched it in the garden. It would jump out and get insects and go back in. Huh. Now these are standard roses, and I only had 3. Come on now, stop laughing. I only had 3, and I had to figure out how I was going to put them. You know, that sometimes it's standard. The roses on a stem that are grafted on the top, standard roses. Sometimes they actually tip them. They'll take a shovel on one side and loosen all the roots and just tip them and lay them down and then cover them with soil and bring them back up with that half root system. Now, I could not take the risk of doing that, so those are rose cones duct taped together. And when we saw them, we thought it for the Christmas party and everybody was going to go through the garden that I'd make them the 3 wise men. Now, say it with me. I love gardening. So even in the winter, and I hate to even do this, but even in the winter it can be beautiful. See the double shadow that created? Just fun. Yucca. Have any of you ever tried Now, yucca is a great plant if you want low maintenance. Have you ever tried to move one? Yeah, raise your hands really high. I want to see. Okay, how many people did it take to lift it out of the hole? And did you put some of the pieces on the compost pile, and next spring they were still growing? You've got to admire that. However, if you plant a yucca, know that's where you want to keep it. This is a variegated yucca. They grow very well here. There is one out that I'm testing right now called banana peel. And it's kind of a chartreuse green with some green specks on it. Very interesting. I like yuccas just for their form. I don't necessarily like them when they're blooming, but there isn't too much I don't like in the garden. But a yucca, you need to put it somewhere where no one's going to get stuck all over the place, too. These are gazanias. This was during one of the hottest summers, and it's been a few years ago. Everything else is kind of going kaput, but they're just saying, wow, I love this. I want to go to Arizona. This is clay tile for roofing. And we were able to go to a roofing company and get these broken and used ones and make it edging. And then that gnome moved in, and we had all this trouble. The queen of any garden is a lotus. Oh my gosh, are those beautiful. You have to have a pretty deep pond to grow lotus, and particularly this variety. But isn't it stunning? Already got its seed head up there saying, look here, we're going to make some seeds. And the beauty of that is it's just stunning. I love gardening from the time I get up in the morning until I go to bed at night. How can that be? I work all day long in the garden from about 5:30 in the morning until probably 6 at night. I go home, and guess what I do? What's wrong with me? I have a headlamp that I wear in my garden. This Girl Scouts honor. All right. We can turn the lights up. This is the last slide if you want to. We can leave it up though. Now, segueing, one of the reasons I've been talking about simplifying your garden is I'm needing to do that. I've gotten to the point that if I work all day, I come home, I'm not quite as excited as I used to be. You know, physically, is that going to work? Oh, wait, I digress, of course. I am 125 pounds lighter than I was 3 years ago. Wow. Congratulations. You may. Thanks. I went to my editor, my boss, and said, I don't think I can stay in the garden too much longer. This has been about 4 years ago. And he said, well, let's find someone that you can nurture on and you can just supervise them and not garden so much. And after that day conversation with him, I went home and did some searching and thought, what in the heck is wrong with you? I can do something about this. You know, I can change my weight, I can get more fit, and I can stay in the garden longer. So I built a village. I started going to Weight Watchers. I got a personal trainer who I could not afford and still can't, but cannot afford not to. And I told everyone in the universe that I know, and believe me, that's a lot, that I had a goal and I was going to lose some weight. I'm still not completely there. However, 2 weeks ago, I think it's been about that, I just ran the Miami Half Marathon. And I'm kind of still tan. And they have medals. The reason I wanted to do this in 2008, I saw these on the internet, and they are the only double spinning medal in the world that you can win by just participating in a marathon. So that was my dream. And there's a palm tree in the middle and a ring around the palm tree and another ring, and when you spin it, the palm tree stays kind of still. And it has a small chip of diamond in it. Anyway, well, can you believe that? 13.1 miles later, I got my medal. And I am still in the garden, and I will still be in the garden, I hope, 10 or 20 years from now, staying fit. This is not my first half marathon. I did a full, 3 other halves, and every time I do one, I am thinner because of the training for that. I'm still lifting the same weight I lifted before. I haven't reduced that. My bones are dense. I am happy. You can lose it in the garden and be healthy. So not only do I love gardening because they are beautiful and they take my breath away, but they are the things that made me decide to live longer and be healthy. Thanks. Okay. So I'm still going to admit that when I get home, I'm kind of tired. And I have a pretty good sized garden. So I'm looking all the time at trying to reduce the amount of work that I have to do in that garden. And my garden has about this much grass. I don't have lots of it. And I am moving from perennials and higher maintenance perennials and higher maintenance shrubs to low maintenance shrubs and small trees. I'm also looking at, number 1, trying to find more hardscape that I can put in my garden, more patio material, trying to recycle things. These new idea of tumbled concrete, recycled concrete is very interesting to me. Building more raised beds, make it a little easier. So the first thing you do to reduce the amount of work that you have in the garden is get rid of some space created with hardscape. Hardscape is usually stone or wood, depending if you are building a new deck, something on that order. Here's what I want. When I reduce the amount of work in my garden, by golly, I want a place to sit and look at it. So you can think on those lines, whether it's limestones or recycled materials, more green materials. I'm also looking at putting my vegetable garden in my perennial border and shrub garden now. So that reduces me going to another garden and I can pick my tomatoes out of a container or a raised bed amongst my flowers. And the other day, oh my gosh, the other day I found these micro-miniature bok choy. You know, bok choy is that oriental, I think it's in the mustard family, and they only grow 3 inches. So my idea is I'm putting those in containers and I still will be able to harvest all that. So the thought process that it takes, even for vegetables, to reduce the amount of work that you have is important. But you really have to have some sort of a vision or a point of view to where am I going to start changing this and what kind of labor is that going to take? Am I young enough now to manage that, to know that in 10 years what this garden is going to look like? So I actually have up here, and after this is over, I have a list of shrubs that do very well on their own, and a large number of them that bloom. And this is particularly for our zones. Are you a zone 5? Yeah. And yeah, you pretend to be. I have a zone 6 or 2 in a courtyard that I have, so that's fun. Anyway, there are things that you can do to reduce that workload, but there are also the thoughts in my part of what I cannot do without. You know, wow, I have to make that choice. Do I want to hire somebody to help me bring in my fig trees that are in containers about this big? That it takes a couple people to move them. Do any of you grow figs? You don't? What? Black turkey is about the best fig to grow in a container. Black turkey. You can find them really, they're pretty available. You can mail order them, little smaller varieties. I have a friend that had very nice figs on about a 3-foot plant last year. My figs are about 8 years old. I've potted them up 2 times. And this is the miracle of gardening, everybody. Are you ready? Figs. I let them freeze in their container, about 20 degrees. I let them defoliate outside, clean them all up, make sure every little cell is decided to suck into that trunk, and then I bring them in. They set in a windowed room all winter. Usually around the 16th of February, I start seeing some buds. They don't seem to care. There's light, there's some heat, all that sort of thing, but they have their own little doggone calendar. So guess what I have right now? Foliating fig trees that are 5 feet tall in a building, my propagation room. I keep it around 58 or 60 degrees, which is helpful, but I think you wouldn't need to do that. I bring them in, take them out. This year, because of their age and because of potting them up last year, they are covered with little figs. I really have, wait, this is true, 20 of them on one tree. We will have some drop, I'm sure. I did not even see them bloom because the bloom is very insignificant. So I have figs in my propagation room indoors waiting to go outside. Those figs will ripen around the 1st of June. During that period of time that they are ripening, I will get a second crop of fig on the same tree. And there is enough that I can give to Cuisine, our cooking magazine, to use in the magazine for photographs. Except for last year, let me tell you. I won't keep you too much longer here. Do you know who Muhammad Khan is? He was a horticulture person on WHO. Well, WHO studios, radio studios, are across the street. If you know who Muhammad is, now listen to this story. One day I saw him last year and he said, "You have great figs." I said, "Really? Do you see them from the window?" He still does the radio station show on Sundays. "Oh no, I come over and eat them." I said, "Muhammad, I thought I didn't have figs this year. I thought they dropped off or something had gotten them, and it takes a long time for them to ripen." And he had been eating them steadily. He's a great information person, great guy, great horticulturalist, but he is on my list. No eating my figs. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and let you take your break now, and I hope you've enjoyed this so far. Thank you.
We'll take about a 15-minute break, and there's coffee and cookies in the back. We'll be taking, if you have your written questions, we'll be going around taking those, and don't forget to sign up for door prizes in the back. So we'll see you in a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So did I do okay? All right. Sweet. You guys all right? I hope so. Oh, I was telling him it's just like I've had enough. I was saturated and I wasn't very brave. My driveway, I have piles at the end of my driveway so high that I can't get snow on them anymore. I'm too short. So I don't know what's going to happen when it melts. It is a huge worry, really. My test garden where I have all those acreage, it's on the river bottom, down by the Waterworks Park, and it floods. So I always go through a period of mourning about it. The corporate garden is more regularly open. The test garden, occasionally we have things that we have to cover up and we can't show you and all that kind of thing. I know, it's a contract thing. But our corporate gardens are lovely. We have a lot of new plants there that I put in. It's an English courtyard with a fountain. you're welcome to come down during a weekend. Certainly, you could just wander in the back there and say hello to the deer that are probably eating all of my plants. He is a little rascal. Well, I didn't tell you guys this, but I was on the radio program with him when he told me this. Oh no! And I'm not quiet about that sort of thing. I always do that guy right there on the radio.
Okay, I think we're ready to get started again. So we will go ahead and have questions and answers. First, I'd like to announce our next forum will be on March 7th, and that will be Kelly Norris. I'm not exactly sure what his topic is. I forgot to look there. But he's written, Diane and I heard him speak. He has a book he's put out about references for the Iowa gardener as far as different places you can visit around Iowa, like gardens and nursery centers, and it's pretty interesting. Thank you. And so that one's March 7th, and then the next forum after that is April 11th, and that will be co-sponsored by Echo Iowa City, and that should be a very good one also. So there's more information in our newsletter and on our website about those. And Kelly's topic is the garden in 4 seasons. So he'll be taking you through the 4 seasons in the garden, talking about design and plant selection, and his book is called The Iowa Gardener's Travel Guide. So I hope you can join us for those as well. So we have a number of questions, and I'll read the question, and then Marcia will give us her answer. So it's kind of like being back in school again. I don't think there's anything too tough here. Okay, first, how do you plant a yucca? Such as, is there special soil? How deep? What kind of winter care?
No, to plant a yucca, pretty much you can plant it directly in the ground. The problem with yuccas and any other type of zero-type scape plants is you have to water them the first year. You know, some people plant that sort of thing and think that they don't have to water them because they don't need much water. But the first year they're really preparing themselves to stay in the ground for a long time. So you need to regularly water them 1 inch a week. Meaning that if it's already rained 1 inch, you don't water, obviously. But to put a trickle of hose, just a trickle, like you're just turning on your faucet so it goes straight down, the hose for 20 minutes usually will measure to about 1 inch in the soil. Okay? So plant a hole as if you were planting a perfect perennial, just a little bit deeper, a little bit wider, and some people use that turkey grit that I like so much in the bottom of the hole of something like that. You find turkey grit at feed stores. It is literally turkey grit. It comes in medium, large, and small. I like the medium one. It's red, granite. That's why I like it.
I'm writing that one down. The turkey grit. Okay. Next, someone wanted to get the spelling on the Nico shrub. I think you said it was a slender Nico Deutschia.
Deutzia. D-E-U-T-Z-I-A. Deutzia. Deutzia. I have a tall Deutzia in my garden. It's called Pinkaboo Deutzia. But Deutzias are shade-loving shrubs. You don't find blooming shade-loving shrubs often. And these guys will take some pretty dense shade. They also can be pruned and trimmed pretty heavily and still are not unhappy the next year and will bloom for you. So Deutzia is a wonderful shade shrub. There's big ones, but Nico is the dwarf or the ground cover type that only gets about 18 to 20 inches tall.
How do you spell
Nico, N-I-K-K-O. Yeah, there's a lot of Nico plants out there.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Tell us about your experience with hellebores.
How long do we have here? Well, I've had some wonderful luck with hellebores. And how many of you have hellebores in your garden? And what, do most of them bloom in March? April? April. Okay, all summer. You know, there are winters that we'll see hellebores come up pretty early in March and bloom in April, but we probably won't see that this year. There are wonderful new hellebores out there with variegated leaves. There's one called Silver Net that is one of my favorites. It's a newer variety, and the foliage actually looks like there's a silver net imprinted on it. It blooms white. The bloom is a little less significant than other hellebores, but we're beginning to see foliage of interest in hellebores. My big experience with them is I was honored enough to speak at the Northwest Flower and Garden Show in Washington State for a couple of times. The first time I was there, I saw they put them in containers, and they were absolutely stunning. They had them indoors, of course, because of this great big venue that they have that's like 3 times the size of the Vets Auditorium thing. But the hellebores, of course, on the west, northwest, are absolutely huge. You know, they're much bigger. My favorite really is the general species hellebore that has the burgundy foliage, and it blooms white. It's just a species hellebore, and I can't think of the botanical name. I'm very sorry. Purpurata hellebore-ish something. And I know I'm not trying to be funny. Honestly, I can't remember it off the top of my head. However, I will tell you that it's probably in here. This is one of my favorite go-to books. It's kind of old, but it's called the Book of Lists, and this happens to be the Midwest Gardener's Book of List. And they will have things like the best shrubs for a wet area, the best plants to grow in the clay, the best perennials, the best trees for the different situations. A reasonably priced book, but it's the Book of List in the Midwest, and it's by Susan McClure. And you're welcome to look at this book after this is over. I brought it along specifically because I knew there were going to be some questions. If I didn't know, I'd have to look really fast. So anyway, hellebores are well worth putting in your garden. If you don't have them, try them, because the most simple ones, the ones that grow the most beautifully, end up being the most beautiful in my opinion. I did have a hellebore blooming last fall. Who said that their hellebore bloomed all the time? Yeah. And I'm not sure, because of the season, what that was all about. I'd never really seen that before. But when you see that fresh foliage coming up out of frozen ground, that's what's very exciting. So put them somewhere where you know there's not going to be tons of snow thrown on them. That's probably the best thing. Put it back just a little ways in the shade garden, and then you'll see them come up. It's also a good thing to have them paired with spring bulbs. Take a look at the time that your hellebore says it's supposed to bloom, and take a look at the time of the bulbs that you can put around it. So you can have wonderful foliage and early daffodils and then the bloom. You know, so you can have lots of bloom going on. I have some antique hyacinths growing under mine. They're very open. They're called chestnut, and they aren't that tight that you see in the really fancy ones. They're more open, and they have a lovely fragrance. So with that open foliage and that nice open bloom, they just look beautiful. So you might kind of think about something that blooms at the same time as hellebore to surprise people, because there are other things that can happen, snowdrops, that sort of thing, if they're very early. Well, there was one more thing. Hellebores. Oh, we have a story coming up on splitting hellebores and about hellebores in general. And hellebores are notoriously impossible to split and move. Did y'all know this? They really resent that like crazy. So we came up together with a way of doing that I had been successful with, and it means to dig it very carefully and get all the root system that you can. Wash it off completely with the hose so that you can see where to split it. That's where people run into problems, because they don't get that growth shoot that you have to have in order to propagate it. And So you can see the growth shoot easily if it's all washed off. And then I like to tie the foliage together but leave the foliage intact without cutting it down. So I like to tie it with, one of my go-tos is recycling plastic bags that you get at the grocery store and making strips because they're very soft. And I tie them up in two places just so the foliage is coming out, so it's kind of like a tree. And then when I transplant them, I may put 3 of those little guys together and put them in the same hole, and you'll see this plastic kind of hanging in the little kind of palm tree top. But it doesn't take for long for them to establish themselves, and they are much happier that way. Okay.
Okay, very good. We're talking about propagation. What is the best resource for propagation information for the home gardener?
I want to say there's a propagation Bible. I cannot, there's one that I use a great deal, and now I can't think of the name of it. I'm very sorry, but the Book of Making Plants, I believe, and please, if I'm on television, I'm sorry. I can't remember. Honestly, I can't remember the name of it. I think it's probably worth going to gardengate.com and looking at some of our websites, because we have researched a lot of propagation. So if you have questions, that would be a good place to start, which is a plug, and my boss would really love me for that. Gardengate.com. There are lots. I have done quite a few through From the Test Garden, which is an article in the magazine. And I think mostly you need to take a look at books in the library, really, that suit you, that look easier, depending on what you're going to propagate. Who asked that question? And no, I won't hurt you, please. Anyway, it depends on what you're going to propagate. If they're begonias, there are tons of begonia books. Sometimes you need to go individual for the propagation of that individual plant. And we have the wonderful world of computers that, whether you believe all of it or not, at least you can Google 10 of them and find out how many of them match in propagation. The thing about propagation mostly is determination and belief that it will grow. It's true. And your hands magically go to the places where they need to be propagated. There was a question about how to propagate coleus. Coleus are, there's a great starting point for anybody that wants to propagate. During the summer, I actually will take a pencil, dig a hole in the same pot where they're growing, break them off and pop them in, and they will grow. You just have to make sure that you have at least 2 leaf nodes. That means where the leaves are coming out, you break those off and the roots will come out of there. So you can put those in the soil. Moist soil for propagation, but also a lot of people put them in water. This is what happens when you put them in water. You forget them, and they have this mass of roots that you can never find the individual anymore. So you put it in a pot, and there's like 12 different kinds of coleus. Ooh, it's pretty, but you didn't end up with your individual. And that's true, isn't it? You're laughing, yeah.
Okay, now we have a bunch of questions about maintenance. To reduce work in your garden, what do you do to control the weeds?
This would be another hour talk. Hey, this is something new that I'm working with right now. There is a mulch product that looks like plastic. Do any of you know about this? They are using it in vegetable crops, particularly sweet corn. There's a place in Grimes near where I live that grows tons of sweet corn. And they use this film that looks like plastic. It's black, and it's made of corn gluten. And it deteriorates and either can be worked in the soil or allowed to deteriorate and put new stuff down. I have actually ordered 2 big rolls of that to grow squash, pumpkins, and various things that will stop those weeds, and I can grow through them because it's black. They enjoy that heat, and I'm hoping that that's going to be a really wonderful product for me, because if you can imagine 11 acres and trying to keep it weeded with a prairie on the other side, so that's one way. And I think mulch is very important. In the winter time, you want to lay some mulch in December after the ground freezes. We didn't have a chance to do that as much this year. But when the ground freezes, you can add heavier layers of mulch because you know the ground has frozen. If you put your heavy mulch down in the fall, thinking it's going to suppress weeds in the spring, you may have allowed that ground not to freeze. And you can lose some of your perennials and some of your tender shrubs. So put the mulch down after the ground has frozen, and the next year you'll see some good results. I don't normally use chemicals, but occasionally I use a pre-emergent. I have tried the corn gluten products, but they're very sporadic, and they don't work as well as we might be led to believe. So if I have a place that I really have to fight, I may use some sort of pre-emergent there, at least for a couple of years, until I can refresh that soil and know there's not a lot of weed seeds in there. The other thing that works very well is children at 5 cents a weed. Yeah.
Can you tell us where the corn gluten mulch
Sure. He's asking about corn gluten and where it's available. The mulch, yes. Henry Fields is selling it, maybe not in as big a quantities as I needed, but they are selling it by the foot, and I believe it's 3 feet wide, so you get it in the mail. Okay? That product is wonderful, but another thing that I digress a little from weeds, but floating row fabric. Do any of you use that white floating row fabric to keep your insects down? Great. Because if you have, this is just fabulous, isn't it? We can have this black, this degradable mulch on the bottom, put floating row fabric on the top. We're going to grow wonderful vines and keep the bugs off them all at the same time. You can get that floating row fabric from Henry Fields, from a lot of nursery supplies, and I think it's called garden film, floating row fabric, vegetable protection, and it comes in different grades. Very lightweight to a heavier weight for places that have to cover things up when it gets cold. Floating row fabric, and also doggone, it takes some time to clean things up. Make sure and pull your weeds before they seed. You know, that's the biggest thing. I have a purslane crop. Oh my gosh. I think one year a section of the garden didn't get used, and the purslane just seeded like crazy. And my solution to that is my friend that has a gardening business has a lot of Hispanic people that love to eat purslane. And it's a delicacy to them before it seeds. So they come in and they take bags full of it home to cook. So that's a solution for purslane.
Okay. How do you deal with Japanese beetles organically?
Oh! Aren't they awful? They got on my rose, you know that beautiful one I love so much, Little Sunshine Knockout? And aren't they pretty, though? They're kind of fluorescent. They're against the, no foliage of that, I forgot. Hand picking works. And I have something to admit to you. I don't kill anything. So what I do is I use milky spore, and I use it as a drench around the plant in the very early spring. That would be in March. And, as soon as the ground thaws, just then. Milky spore is a bacillus, you know, like we use the dipels and some of those things. You can buy milky spore very easily in nursery centers. Mix it up in a water, it's usually a powder, and drench around, because those Japanese beetles are laying their eggs underneath the host plant. And many times it'll be roses that are sweet for some reason, the ones that have fragrance. So whatever plants were most attacked by those Japanese beetles, get some milky spore and start using it. You all know that the Japanese beetles come mostly from lawns. Those grubs out there turn into Japanese beetles and find a good food source. So if we are able to use milky spore in our lawns as well, that would start curtailing the large quantities that we're seeing. So we need to get rid of the grub before they turn into the insect so that we can reduce the numbers. I was at Ryman Gardens at Iowa State last year, and they had, this is not an exaggeration, 20 students out there hand-picking those. Because they have all of the roses that I just had this mental block. But thank you. Oh my gosh, who said that? I have to give you something. Oh, you already got something. So for Japanese beetle, I think the thing is prevention and probably milky spore, which is something that doesn't hurt too much of anybody else unless they're a soft-sided grub.
Sometimes you see the starlings and robins in the early spring looking for earthworms, and I think they find the grubs as well.
Okay,
I
yeah,
can't prove that, but I think it's true.
yeah, she's talking about the birds taking care of some of the grub problems. And yes, you can do that, but I will tell you a story. I could tell you several stories. I used to work on a golf course. And the blackbirds would come in the fall and strip the sod back for feet and feet and feet, along with the raccoons. They all got together and said, let's go over to hole 7 and ruin the entire part of it. So if you see that kind of damage, then you know you've got grubs. You know the test for grubs, that you cut a foot square of sod, flip it over, leave the side intact, count. If you have more than 9 grubs in that foot square, then you need to treat somehow. I really hate the chemical 4-step program from, I won't say who does that usually, but that's just adding chemical to the place that maybe you don't need it. So you really need to check that. But the milky spore is sold in granule form for lawns, and sometimes it takes 2 years to get that to work. But that's the biggest thing I hear coming out of Iowa State University, that if we can do some prevention for these doggone Japanese beetles, not that they aren't beautiful, but if we can get them taken care of. I wouldn't mind having more June bugs. I kind of like those. But Japanese beetles are too destructive. So that's milky spore is the answer to that.
Okay. This person says, I usually prune my grapevine about now, but there is knee-high snow around it. How long is it safe to wait to prune the grapes?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think it will just hold itself. It's like my figs. I believe that it's just not even going to start out this year if it's covered with snow. By the time you can get to it, prune it. I think that's as simple as that. Let's let nature take its course, kind of. And you could get a shovel and dig all of it out and maybe damage more than you know about. But yeah, that's the thing to do, is just as soon as you can get to them, do your pruning.
Okay. This person says, I have a white peace clematis 10 feet high and 6 feet wide. How can I trim it back to the trellis without killing it? It blooms most of the summer.
What's the name of it again?
White peace.
What time of year does it start blooming?
Probably June.
June. So it's a little bit later. Here's my suggestion to you, and you're going to hate me for it. If you have a clematis that's that big, you could nearly take it to the ground. Do it in the fall. Do it in the fall. Trim it back severely. I think you'd be happy. Yeah, you got to be courageous sometimes and brutal. If it's taking over the world, is it an...
I mean, it is.
Mm-hmm.
I have 4 trellises now.
Well, first of all, after we get the Guinness Book of World Records to your house, you could still cut it back to the trellis. Absolutely. Do some severe pruning on that in the fall, and you'll have blooms. Don't worry about it. Absolutely you will. There's several different types, A, B, and C clematis, that different times a year that you prune them. But I think you could get away with that in the fall. So you can also prune it back probably after it blooms, like the first big flush. Do some pruning back on it. I think you'll be happier with it. And it will not last that big for too much longer. You're doing it a favor, really, to give it a good haircut. So be brave. Bring some people along for an intervention if you can't do it.
Okay. And the last question that I have, actually about 4 people asked the same question. Do you offer tours of your test gardens?
Well, yes. One of the things that I enjoy, like this would be, gardening was first, and talking to folks like you is second, and third really is to show the gardens. I actually can give you my email address, and you can use it to put on the internet. Okay. I don't mind that at all. And email me. If you are dropping by and just happen to be in Des Moines, give me a little bit of time, but if you have something you want to schedule, gosh, sure, I love that. And there'll be a lot of new plants. I have several gardens in the location on Grand Avenue down from the governor's mansion. Beautiful plantings. That's where a lot of the photos are taken. And I would enjoy having you come and visit. The spontaneously just come, sometimes it doesn't work very well because we may be in the middle of shooting something and I don't want you to see all the secrets that we use.
Okay, so I think what we'll do, and Marcia also has had some handouts and ran out of those, so we will post that on our website at projectgreen.org, and then we'll also post her email address on there too, if people want the tour. So those were all the questions that I had, unless anyone else.
Now, are they lack of questions because I did such a good job?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank